Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to compare the Ozark Trail Smokeless Fire Pit to the Solo Stove Ranger Smokeless Fire Pit. This video is to help you make a decision on which of the two you should make a purchasing decision on. I am Andrew and Mitch, and welcome to the channel. If camping and hiking is something that you like to do, make sure you hit the subscribe button to stick around. We do a lot of gear reviews and camping tips just to make your outdoor experience a little bit more enjoyable. But let's start out with the Ozark Trail Smokeless Fire Pit. So I've done two videos on this particular fire pit. I will link the first one right now. And that video is an unboxing and initial thoughts and kind of a review video for this fire pit. And then the other one that I will link right now is my thoughts after 6 months of using this thing. Both of those videos will be linked in the description, just in case the whole tagging up here thing. I'm still working on that stuff. So check the link down below. If they're not showing on your screen, we're showing on your, you get it. Now I'm going to give you my final thoughts on which I think is worth purchasing at the end of this video. So if that's what you're looking for, make sure you stick around. But there's one big thing that I really like about this one and one thing that I really dislike about this one. The thing that I really like is the price. This thing is about half the price of the Solo Stove Ranger. So if budget is your biggest thing, this is probably going to be the stove for you. But the thing that I dislike the most is the height of this thing. Now, I thought a higher fire pit would be better, but it turns out for my uses, it's been kind of a detriment. So, for example, as I sit here around the fire, because it is so much higher, the heat really dissipates out the top. So if you're standing directly over top of it, it is very toasty. But if you're sitting where I am, you're getting almost no heat, and that is something that is very different compared to the Solo Stove. So if you plan on using this in any kind of cold weather situation, you might be a little bit disappointed with how close you have to actually get to this thing to get real heat off of it. Now there is one major benefit that comes along with it being a higher fire pit, and that is the ability to cook on it is a little bit easier than the shorter fire pits. Now I say a little bit easier because from my experience, cooking on a smokeless fire pit is incredibly difficult. Now, I'm not an expert by any means, and I haven't cooked on this thing or the other ones a ton, but what I do know is the top of any of the smokeless fire pits is where majority of the heat is. It will be significantly hotter right over top than anywhere around it. And because of that, having a grate over top of it catches all the focused heat. Even just a few too many hot coals can be too much heat to cook on it, so it's a benefit because it's easier than some of the other stoves and the Solo Stove in particular, but it's so difficult that it might not really be worth the change, if that makes sense. So those are my two major things on this particular stove. I will be back and we will talk about the Solo Stove, and at the end of the video I will tell you which one I would personally purchase if I were only going to have one or the other. But let's cover the Solo Stove. Okay, so we covered the Ozark Trail Smokeless Fire Pit. It's time to cover the Solo Stove Smokeless Fire Pit, and this one is the Ranger. Now when it comes to the Ranger, there are two things that I really like compared to the Ozark Trail Smokeless Fire Pit. The first one is the size. It is one piece and it is much smaller height-wise than the other, and when you're sitting around it, it gives you a lot more of a direct heat, which is just, you wouldn't think that a couple inches makes that much of a difference when it comes to like how much heat you would actually be hit with. I can't even put it into words. You are 50% warmer using this thing than you are using the fire stove or the Ozark Trails. It makes that much of a difference. Just sitting at like normal camp chair height, you will notice this thing puts off much more heat at a convenient height. The next thing is that it is basically just one whole piece. So there is an ashtray and like a little guard on the inside, but the fire pit itself is one solid piece, and you don't have to worry about sliding it together. You just take it out of the bag, set it on the ground, and it's ready to go. Now, both of those might sound like kind of insignificant things, but I promise those things by itself make a world of difference when you're getting this thing in and out, setting it up for camp, taking it down for camp, or just sitting around it. The whole point for me of having the fire pit is to have a cool looking flame and just kind of the fire there. But a lot of people use it for the heat. So if you aren't getting the amount of heat that you want from it, I don't know the point of having the fire pit. Now, I will say there are two downsides to the Solo Stove fire pit opposed to the Ozark Trails. One being the bag that it goes in. I really dislike the bag that came with this particular fire stove or solo stove. I don't know if the bag is just too small or what exactly is going on, but it's so inconvenient to get this thing in and out compared to the Ozark Trails fire pit where you literally just pick it up, drop it in, it's good. The bag is definitely heavier duty for the solo stove, but as far as convenience and actually being able to use it, the Ozark Trail is significantly better. And the other thing is, and probably the number one thing that you guys all already know, is the price. This is double the price of the Ozark Trails, so you're probably wondering, well, is it worth it? And with one word, my answer is yes. If budget is your determining factor and you cannot get yourself to spend $200 on a fire pit, but you have been thinking about getting a smokeless fire pit to add to your camping kit, I say get the Ozark Trail. Having some kind of smokeless fire pit and the conveniences that come with it are great. It's added a ton to my camping experience, just making it not even just a little bit better, but just overall better. So if budget is your number one thing, maybe go with the Ozark Trail. But if you aren't afraid to spend a little bit more money for, in my opinion, a much better product, I would definitely go with the solo stove. Better quality, the better size, the more convenience that you have with this thing is just worth it. Now, if you want a few more details on the solo stove, I do have two videos that I will link down below. One is the initial unboxing, and the other one is a review after 6 months. And I go into a little bit more details about the overall thoughts of like each particular area of this thing. But when it comes down to it, I think the solo stove wins compared to the knockoff Ozark Trail. Lastly, if you plan on buying the solo stove, I will have a link down below. If you could use that to purchase, I would really appreciate it. It does help the channel a lot if you use the affiliate links. I do get a small percentage of that sale, so that would be awesome. But regardless of what you do, I appreciate you, and until next time, peace.